Hi, everyone. Before I start, I want to ask, where are you watching from? Maybe from New York, Toronto, Miami, or somewhere else in the US or Canada. Wherever you are, I hope you're safe and cozy, because what I'm about to tell you is not just a story, it's my life. My name is Emily Parker. I'm 35, living in a small town in Florida before all this happened. I have brown hair that curls naturally if I don't fight it, and hazel eyes that my friends always say can see too much sometimes. I was married for 10 years, had a home I loved, and thought my life was steady. Or at least that's what I believed. You know, life has a way of showing you the cracks in the walls you think are solid. My husband, Jason, was always charming. At least that's what I thought. He worked in finance, always busy, always telling me he was doing it for our future. And I believed him. We laughed together, we traveled, we even had a small dog, Max, who was basically our child. People told me I was lucky, that we were the perfect couple. But behind the smiles, things were slowly breaking. I never imagined the breaking point would be a text. Yes, a simple text. One morning, I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through emails on my laptop before work, and my phone buzzed. I saw a message from Jason. I thought maybe he forgot to take out the trash, or wanted to check about dinner. But the words on the screen made my chest drop. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 22-year-old babe. I've already emptied our joint account. Ha ha ha. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so hard I thought Max, who was lying on the carpet, might notice. I stared at the words. I couldn't believe it. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of trust, and in one sentence, he declared he had erased everything we built together. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just calmly replied, "Good luck."
Yes.
Just those two words.
Calm.
Neutral. Almost like the wind whispered them through my lips. And that was when I realized something terrifying and thrilling at the same time. He didn't know. He didn't know that I had already done something too. Something he could never undo. Weeks before, I had noticed his spending habits. Little things added up. Withdrawals here, strange online purchases there. I began to worry. Not about money. Not really. But about honesty, trust, and whether the life I thought I had was real. So, I had quietly started transferring funds, my savings, our shared account, a small inheritance from my grandmother, into accounts he didn't know about. Accounts I controlled. It wasn't much compared to the world's riches, but it was my safety net, my freedom plan. And now, as I sent that text back, I realized he had fallen right into my silent preparation. By the time he read my reply, it was already too late. I remember staring out the window after hitting send, Max pawing at my lap, and thinking about how strange life was. One second, I was the calm wife sipping coffee. The next, I was on the edge of a storm I hadn't even realized I was steering. I felt a mix of fear and excitement, like standing at the top of a cliff knowing you might fly or fall. But let me take a step back. You might be asking, who is Jason? Who is this 22-year-old babe? And why would I have a plan so calculated, so precise, that I could outsmart him even when he thought he had all the power? Jason was 36, 2 years older than me. Handsome in that clean-cut way that makes everyone assume he's perfect, but you only see the charm on the surface. Smart, ambitious, but selfish. He loved the thrill of control, and that was his weakness. He never saw me as someone who could think past his own plans. That was my advantage. As for the 22-year-old babe, I won't give her much energy here because she didn't matter to me beyond what she represented. Distraction, temptation, and a mirror of the things Jason valued more than our marriage. And now he was gone, thinking he won, while I quietly reclaimed everything he thought he could take. After the text, I didn't feel victorious immediately. I felt calm, like the world paused for a moment. I watched Jason's messages go unread, noticed the typing bubbles appear and disappear on my phone. He was frantic, angry, confused, but I stayed calm. And that's when the first real twist hit me. I realized that escaping wasn't just about him.
It was about me.
My life, my freedom, my dignity.
So I packed a small bag.
Nothing fancy, just enough to remind me I was moving forward, not backward. I made a list in my head. First stop, Miami.
Find a job.
Find a place to live. Start over. Start fresh. But life, as always, has a way of sneaking up on you. Because just as I zipped my suitcase and looked out at the city's skyline one last time, I heard a knock on my door. It wasn't Max pawing. It wasn't the mailman. It wasn't my neighbor dropping by with sugar. It was something else. Something that made my heart skip and my mind race. And that's where I leave you for now, because what happened next changed everything. The knock on my door wasn't soft. It was sharp, demanding, almost like it wanted me to drop everything and answer right away. Max growled softly, low in his throat, as if he knew something was off. I froze for a moment, heart thumping, wondering if I should just ignore it. But curiosity won over fear. Slowly, I walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. On the other side was a delivery man, a plain brown uniform and a cap shadowing his face. He held a small package in one hand, and the other hand rested impatiently on the handle. I frowned. I hadn't ordered anything. "Hi, Emily Parker?" he asked. His voice was neutral, but there was something in the way he said my name that felt heavy. "Yes," I replied, opening the door slightly. "What is it?" He handed me the package, and when I took it, I felt the weight of it immediately. It was heavier than expected. I signed the digital pad without a word, trying to keep my calm. As he walked away, I shut the door slowly, curiosity burning through me. I sat down at the kitchen table and examined the box. No return address. No markings. Just my name on top. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a single envelope. Plain, white, nothing fancy. I hesitated. My gut told me to throw it away, but something made me tear it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and written in Jason's handwriting were the words, "I know what you've done. You think you're clever. Good luck, Emily. Miami won't save you." My stomach dropped. I had expected him to be angry, sure, but this was different. He had found out something, or at least he suspected something. My mind raced. Had he traced the account transfers? Had he figured out my plan? The calm I had felt earlier suddenly felt fragile, like a thin glass about to shatter. I took a deep breath and reminded myself, fear is temporary. Calm is power. And I still had Max curled up next to me, my apartment, and most importantly, the freedom I had been planning for months. I wasn't going to let a single note, no matter how threatening, steal that from me. I folded the paper carefully and placed it in my purse. For now, ignoring it was the best move. But I knew Jason wouldn't stop. He never did. He thrived on chaos and control. And now that he thought I was vulnerable, he would try harder. The rest of that day was uneventful. Or at least, as uneventful as life can be when your husband just announced he's leaving you for someone 20 years younger and emptied your joint account. I went to work, kept my interactions polite, and tried to focus on the mundane. My colleagues, oblivious to my personal storm, chatted about their kids, weekend plans, and TV shows. I smiled, laughed when necessary, and nodded, but inside, my mind was planning. By the evening, I returned home, unpacked the groceries I had bought on the way, and tried to relax. Max jumped onto the couch beside me, demanding attention. I scratched behind his ears and thought about how strange life could be, how quickly stability can turn into uncertainty. Then came another unexpected event. My phone buzzed with a notification. It was a social media message from someone I barely knew, a mutual friend of Jason's and mine from college. "Emily, I don't know if Jason has told you, but things are messy. Be careful." The message didn't say much, but it made my pulse quicken. What did he mean by messy? Did he mean Jason's new relationship? Or had he started digging into my life, trying to expose my plan? I closed the message, trying not to let panic take over. I reminded myself again. I was in control. I had thought this through. I had prepared for him to try something, and I had safeguards in place. I wasn't just a victim. I was someone who refused to be powerless. The next morning, I decided to take action. I couldn't just sit and wait for Jason to escalate. I called my bank to confirm that all transfers were complete and accounted for. Everything was intact. My plan had worked. I was free financially, and the safety net I had quietly built over the past months was secure. But just as relief began to settle in, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Jason. My heart skipped. I opened it slowly. Emily, you don't know what you've started. I'm coming for you. I dropped the phone on the couch. Max barked at it, as if he, too, sensed danger. I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't just words anymore, it was a warning. And then it hit me. He wasn't just going to accept losing control quietly. This was going to escalate. I had prepared for financial battles, for emotional chaos, for confrontation, but I hadn't prepared for him showing up. I glanced out the window at the street below. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow on the city. It was beautiful.
Calm.
Ordinary. And yet, beneath that calm was a storm waiting to break. That night, I barely slept. Every sound, a car door slamming, a distant siren, Max's restless pause, made me tense. I kept imagining Jason's face at my door, the rage in his eyes, the chaos he could bring. And then, just as I drifted into a light sleep, I heard it, a soft, deliberate tapping at my window. Not the front door. The window. I froze. My heart raced so fast I thought it might burst. I slowly crept toward the window, pulling the curtains slightly aside. The street was empty. Nothing. Just the warm glow of the streetlights. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Wind, maybe a branch, but a tiny piece of paper fluttered onto my windowsill. I picked it up. My hands were shaking. It was another note, smaller this time. Messy handwriting. Angry, rushed. You can run, Emily, but you can't hide. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about control, about power, about proving who would bend first. I knew then that my journey wasn't just a physical escape to Miami. It was going to be a battle of wits, courage, and endurance. And I had no choice but to face it head on. But just as I was about to make a plan for the night, I heard a car engine start outside my building.
Slow.
Intentional. Someone was leaving, or maybe waiting. And that's when I understood. Jason was closer than I thought. Chapter 2 ends here, leaving the story in extreme suspense. Emily's safe for now, but the next chapter will escalate the danger, introduce a less extreme event to balance the tension, and end with a shocking twist again. The sound of the engine outside haunted me. I couldn't tell if it was a warning or just coincidence, but my body refused to relax. Max was at my feet, growling softly, his ears perked. I peeked through the blinds again. The street was empty, no car in sight. My mind raced. Was it Jason? Or someone else connected to him? I decided to calm myself. Panic wouldn't help. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea and sat by the window, trying to focus on something ordinary, anything. I sipped the tea slowly, Max resting beside me, and allowed myself to think about normal life again. Work, friends, a walk in the park. For a few minutes, I could almost forget the chaos that had started with a single text. That afternoon, I received a call from my sister, Claire. She lived in Atlanta and had always been the more level-headed one between us. Emily, I just heard. I don't even know what to say, Claire said, her voice trembling slightly. Jason, what did he do? I took a deep breath. He sent me a text. Said he's leaving me for some 22-year-old girl and emptied our account. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Claire spoke, firm but gentle. Emily, you need to be careful. I know you. You've always been smart, but he sounds dangerous. I smiled faintly, grateful for her concern. I know. That's why I've been careful. Don't worry, Claire. I've got a plan.
We talked for a while.
She reminded me to stay safe, to watch my surroundings, and most importantly, to trust myself. After we hung up, I felt a little stronger. Even though the world was falling apart, my family and friends were still my anchor. For the rest of the day, life returned to a quieter rhythm. I went to the grocery store, picked up essentials, even chatted briefly with the cashier about the upcoming weekend. Everything seemed normal. Almost too normal. But that evening, the first extreme event happened again. I was in my living room, folding laundry, when I heard it, a loud crash from my kitchen. I froze, every nerve on edge. Max barked furiously, darting toward the noise. I grabbed a baseball bat I kept near the door, not because I liked violence, but because I liked being prepared. Slowly, I walked toward the kitchen. The lights were on. Everything looked normal until I noticed the small glass vase on the counter had been knocked over. Water and flowers spilled across the countertop. I stepped closer and saw a note inside the vase, soaked but legible. My heart pounded. Written in jagged letters were the words, "Stop ignoring me. You can't escape what's coming." That's when I realized Jason wasn't just threatening me online or from afar. He had come inside my apartment. He had found a way in. I called the police immediately. They took my statement, inspected the apartment, and promised extra patrols in the area. I stayed with a neighbor for the night. Max was restless, whining softly, and I held him close, trying to find a sense of safety. The next day, I returned home. Everything seemed calm again. The sun was shining. Birds chirped outside. But I knew better. Danger had entered my life, and it wasn't leaving anytime soon. I decided it was time to take further steps. I contacted a security company and installed cameras, changed my locks, and even set up alerts for anyone entering the building. I was creating a fortress, piece by piece. Still, life had its quieter, sweeter moments. I went out for coffee and met a kind barista named Julia, who always made me laugh despite the stress I carried. She didn't know my story, and that was the beauty of it. People like Julia reminded me that the world wasn't all chaos. That even when someone tries to destroy you, small acts of kindness can keep you grounded. But just when I thought the day would end quietly, I heard it, the familiar sound of a car engine outside again. Only this time it was different. Louder, slower, intentional. I peeked through the blinds. My heart froze. The car stopped directly in front of my building, and in the passenger seat, I saw someone I recognized instantly. Jason, smirking, as if he already knew he had the upper hand. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just sending threats anymore, he was here. In my neighborhood. Watching. Waiting. And that's where Chapter 3 ends. Emily has taken precautions, but Jason's presence outside signals a dangerous escalation. The next chapter will continue with the consequences of him being so close, a quieter event to balance the tension, and then end with another shocking twist. Jason's car sat outside like a predator waiting for its prey. I hugged Max tightly, my mind racing with possibilities. Was he planning to confront me directly? Or was he trying to scare me, to make me panic? Either way, I refused to let fear control me. I had survived worse than threats and texts. I could handle this. I decided to stay inside and wait for nightfall. Sunlight streamed through my blinds, but I barely noticed it. My focus was entirely on him, the smirk on his face, the way he didn't move from his car. I watched every small movement through my camera feed I had installed a few days ago. The security system felt like a lifeline. I knew he hadn't breached the apartment yet, and that gave me some comfort. Hours passed. I made lunch, tried to read a book, even gave Max a treat to distract him. But the sense of unease never left. Every time a car drove by, I jumped. Every time the phone buzzed, I flinched. And yet, life continued in its quieter ways. The mail arrived, my neighbor waved hello, and Julia, the barista from the coffee shop, sent me a funny text about a dog that wore sunglasses. Small acts like that reminded me the world wasn't entirely consumed by chaos. Then came the extreme event. Around 7 p.m., the power went out. The whole building plunged into darkness. My heart raced. I reached for my flashlight and my phone, only to find the batteries low. Panic bubbled inside me for the first time that day. Max growled, and I shushed him, trying to stay calm. I moved slowly to the window to see what was happening outside. And there, illuminated by the faint glow of the streetlights, I saw him again. Jason, walking slowly toward my building. The smirk was gone. His face was cold, determined. I realized then that he wasn't just threatening me anymore. He was crossing the line. I called 911 immediately, whispering my address and explaining the situation. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way, but I knew I couldn't just wait passively. I had to protect myself. I locked the door, reinforced the windows, and tried to stay as quiet as possible. Minutes felt like hours. Then I heard it, a soft scraping sound at the back door. My blood ran cold. He had somehow found a way to test my defenses. I held Max close and whispered, "It's okay, buddy. We can do this." I tried to focus on calmness. My mind went to my grandmother, who had always told me, strength isn't about fighting others, it's about holding your ground and protecting your peace. I repeated it in my head like a mantra, trying to steady my racing heart. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the sound stopped. I didn't know if he had left or was waiting for another chance. The police arrived a few minutes later, sirens flashing. They scanned the area, questioned neighbors, and finally told me it was safe to unlock the doors. I slumped on the couch, exhausted, but not defeated. This was another extreme, yes, but I survived it. And I reminded myself, survival wasn't just about escaping danger, it was about holding on to your peace, your dignity, and your life. The next day, I decided to take a small step toward normalcy. I walked to the nearby park with Max. The sun was shining, children were laughing, and joggers passed by with earbuds in. For the first time in days, I felt a bit of relief. Life wasn't all chaos. Even when someone tries to destroy you, small joys exist. I met a woman named Hannah, walking her golden retriever. We chatted briefly about dogs, the weather, and the neighborhood. Her kindness reminded me that even when people like Jason try to take everything from you, other people exist who are good, warm, and genuine. But then came the next shocking twist. As I returned to my apartment, I noticed my mailbox open. My heart skipped. I approached carefully. Inside was a small envelope. I hesitated, my hand trembling. It was a photo. Jason, inside my building earlier that day, peering through the hallway window, as if he had eyes everywhere. Written on the back in sharp letters. "You think you're safe. You're not. I'm watching." And in that moment, I realized the game had changed. This wasn't just about money, separation, or anger anymore. It was about fear, control, and proving who had power. And Jason had escalated to a level I hadn't fully prepared for. I knew then that leaving for Miami wasn't just a plan anymore. It was a necessity. Staying meant risking everything. But escaping wouldn't be simple. He had eyes everywhere, and I needed a strategy to outsmart him, not just survive. As I sat down, Max curled in my lap. I made a vow. I wouldn't just run. I would protect myself. I would reclaim my life. And I would do it with calmness, wit, and strength. But even as I made that vow, I heard a faint noise outside my apartment again. A car door slamming. Footsteps. And then a voice, low, menacing, familiar. "Emily, I know you're in there." Jason's voice echoed in my mind long after it faded. I stayed frozen near the window, Max trembling at my feet, trying to process what had just happened. He wasn't just outside anymore, he was testing me, pushing boundaries, and I had to be smarter than ever. I spent the rest of that night awake. Every creak of the building, every whisper of wind against the windows, made me flinch. I held Max tightly, whispering reassurances to both of us. Sleep was impossible, but staying alert was survival. The next morning, I decided I couldn't face this alone. I called my sister, Claire, again. "Claire," I whispered urgently, he's here. He's watching. I don't know what to do." Claire's voice was calm but firm. "Emily, breathe.
Listen to me.
You need to leave.
Now.
Not tomorrow, not later. I'll help you. Pack only what you need and meet me at the airport. We'll figure this out together." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. That was the plan. Miami. Freedom. Safety. I spent the morning packing carefully. Not just my clothes and essentials, but also important documents, copies of my financial accounts, and anything Jason could try to use against me. I double-checked locks, loaded Max's carrier in the car, and drove quietly to a nearby cafe to regroup. For the first time in days, I allowed myself a less extreme moment. A cup of hot chocolate, the chatter of strangers, the smell of fresh pastries. Life didn't stop outside my apartment walls. There was still normalcy, laughter, and small acts of kindness. A woman at the next table smiled at me when Max wagged his tail. That tiny gesture reminded me that no matter how dark life seemed, there was still warmth in the world. I stayed at the cafe for hours, watching the street and thinking through my escape plan. Then came the next extreme event. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. "Don't think you can run, Emily. I know where you are." My chest tightened. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. This was surveillance. Jason had somehow tracked me to the cafe. The feeling of being watched made every nerve in my body scream. I stayed calm, though. Panic wouldn't help. I called the cafe manager and explained the situation discreetly. They allowed me to move to a private corner and kept an eye on the doors. I felt a small surge of relief knowing people around me were aware and ready to help. As the day went on, I realized I had to move fast. Waiting even a few more hours could give Jason the advantage. I booked a flight to Miami that night, carefully checking that no one could see my bookings online. I arranged a ride to the airport that avoided main streets, trying to stay unpredictable. Finally, night fell. I retrieved Max from under the table, double-checked my bag, and left the cafe quietly. The streets were dim, quiet, almost peaceful. I could almost convince myself I was safe. Almost. But then, as I approached my car, I noticed a figure in the shadows across the street. My heart stopped. I froze, trying to see clearly. The figure stepped forward, and my blood ran cold.
It was Jason.
I turned and ran toward the car, Max barking furiously, my keys trembling in my hand. He didn't chase me immediately, just stood there, a predator waiting, but I knew he was testing me again. Testing my fear. I jumped into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and started the engine. Jason's eyes never left me. He didn't say a word. He didn't move. He just watched. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't going to stop until he broke me completely. I drove away carefully, trying not to panic. My pulse pounded as I navigated streets I barely remembered. Every shadow felt like him. Every car passing was another threat. I focused on breathing, on Max beside me, on the fact that I had a plan, and I would see it through. As I approached the highway, I thought I was finally safe. That's when it happened, the shocking twist that ended Chapter 5. A car pulled out in front of me suddenly, blocking my path. Headlights blinded me. I slammed on the brakes. Max barked and whimpered. And then I saw the license plate. It was Jason's car. He wasn't just following me. He had cut me off. I gripped the steering wheel, heart racing, knowing that the real battle, one I hadn't fully prepared for, was about to begin. The sudden appearance of Jason's car in front of me made my heart slam against my ribs. Max barked and thrashed in his carrier beside me, adding to my panic. For a moment, I felt frozen, trapped, and terrified. But then I remembered something my grandmother had always said: "Fear is temporary, Emily. Courage lasts forever." I took a deep breath and focused. I couldn't let him control me anymore. I pressed the accelerator lightly, keeping a careful eye on the rearview mirror. Jason didn't immediately follow. For a moment, I thought I had lost him. Maybe he was just testing me again. I took a quiet route, avoiding the main highways, taking back streets I didn't often drive. The city lights blurred past, and Max calmed slightly as I spoke to him softly. "It's okay, boy. We're almost free." Almost. After what felt like hours but was really only 30 minutes, I pulled into a small, dimly lit gas station. I needed to think, plan, and rest briefly before getting on the road again. I filled the tank, bought some water, and allowed myself a rare moment of calm. It was in that calm moment that I met someone unexpected, a woman named Vanessa. She worked the gas station and noticed how tense I looked. "Rough day?" she asked, genuinely concerned. I hesitated, unsure how much to tell her. But there was something kind in her eyes that made me trust her immediately. "Yeah, you could say that," I replied cautiously. Vanessa didn't push further. She simply smiled and handed me a free coffee.
Here.
Sometimes a little caffeine and kindness go a long way. Her small act of empathy struck me deeply. I realized that even in the middle of chaos, small gestures could restore faith in humanity. I smiled faintly, feeling lighter, if only for a moment. But then came the next extreme event. While I was outside checking the tires, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street, just far enough to seem coincidental, but too close to ignore. My stomach dropped. My hands trembled. And through the window, I saw a familiar silhouette, Jason. He wasn't subtle this time. He had been tracking me, watching every move. Panic surged through me, but I fought it down. I had to remain calm. I had to think clearly, and most importantly, I had to get to Miami safely. I jumped back into the car, Max yapping nervously, and started driving again. This time, I stayed on secondary highways, switching lanes and keeping an eye out for any sudden movements. I felt like a cat on the edge of a cliff, alert, aware, ready to spring at any moment. By late evening, I pulled into a rest stop miles from the city. Exhaustion was creeping in, but I refused to stop entirely. I parked in a well-lit area, checked my phone for directions to the next safe spot, and sat for a moment to breathe. It was here, at this moment of supposed calm, that the shocking twist occurred. A man approached my car. He wore a dark hoodie, hands stuffed in his pockets. I immediately locked the doors, heart racing. "Are you Emily Parker?" the man asked, his voice low but controlled. I froze. Who is this? A stranger? A threat? Or someone coming to help? "Yes, who are you?" I asked cautiously, gripping the steering wheel. The man pulled back the hood, revealing a familiar face, one I had never expected to see here, far from home, far from anyone I knew. It was Jason's younger brother, Ryan. He looked worried, but there was a strange determination in his eyes. "You need to get out of here. Now," Ryan said urgently. "Jason, he's not just angry. He's dangerous. He's planning something bigger, and you can't fight him alone." My mind raced. I didn't know if I could trust Ryan, but the sincerity in his eyes and the desperation in his voice made me realize one thing. This wasn't just about money or revenge anymore. This was about survival. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. Escaping to Miami wasn't just a plan anymore. It was going to require allies, strategy, and courage I didn't know I fully had. Chapter 6 ends here, with Emily encountering a new character who could be a potential ally or another complication. The suspense remains high, blending extreme danger with a less extreme moment of human kindness. I stared at Ryan, my heart still pounding from the drive and Jason's relentless pursuit. I didn't know whether to trust him, but the urgency in his eyes was impossible to ignore. Max whimpered beside me, sensing my tension, and I reached down to stroke his head, trying to calm both of us. "Ryan, why are you here?" I asked cautiously. "Why now?" Ryan looked around, ensuring no one was watching. "Because Jason isn't thinking straight. He's spiraling, Emily. You think you've been clever, but he's obsessed now. I came because I can't let him do something he'll regret, and I can't let you be hurt either." I wanted to ask more questions, but I didn't have time. My instincts told me danger was still close, and I had to move. "Okay," I said finally. "Tell me what we're doing." Ryan quickly explained a plan. He knew a safe route out of the area and could help me reach Miami without Jason tracking me directly. He had contacts in the airport, friends who could provide temporary lodging, and resources I didn't even know existed. The problem was timing. We needed to leave now. I nodded. I didn't fully understand all the details, but action was better than panic. I packed my essentials quickly, the important documents, my bag, Max's carrier, and a few personal items. Ryan helped carry some of the heavier items to his car, and we moved silently toward the back alley he had suggested. For the first time in hours, I felt a small sense of hope. It wasn't complete relief, but it was something. I realized that even when life seems to be collapsing around you, small acts of trust and help from others can make all the difference. Ryan's kindness and decisiveness reminded me of the lesson I had been learning. Survival is about using your strength, but sometimes it's also about letting others help. We reached the car, and Ryan opened the door for me. Max jumped in, and I followed, closing the door quickly. I glanced back at the street. It was quiet, almost eerily calm, but I knew better. Danger was out there. Jason wasn't going to give up that easily. We started driving slowly, using back roads and side streets to avoid being seen. I tried to focus on my breathing, on the hum of the engine, on the feeling of wheels turning on asphalt. I reminded myself, each mile we drove was a step toward freedom. Each mile was a small victory against the chaos Jason had created. For a while, nothing happened. We talked quietly. Ryan asked about my life, my job, my family. I told him a little, careful not to reveal too much about the money or my plans. The conversation was mundane, normal, and it felt like a gift. It reminded me that life still existed beyond fear, beyond threats. That even in the midst of extreme situations, small human connections could ground you. But then, just as I allowed myself a tiny moment of comfort, the extreme event hit again. A black SUV appeared in the rearview mirror, following closely, its headlights glaring like daggers in the dark. Jason.
Of course it was him.
My pulse spiked. Ryan noticed immediately and swerved slightly to block the view, trying to throw him off. I gripped the seat, Max barking frantically, my heart hammering. Jason's SUV accelerated, mirroring our every move. It was clear he was willing to take dangerous risks just to keep up. I realized then that this wasn't just a game for him. It was an obsession. He wanted control, and he wouldn't stop until he had it, no matter the consequences. Ryan kept driving cautiously but quickly, using tricks I had never considered, turns through alleyways, sudden stops, changing lanes unpredictably. He was skilled, and I clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could lose him. But then, out of nowhere, another car pulled into the road ahead, forcing us to slow down. Ryan cursed under his breath. The road narrowed, and I could see Jason closing in from behind. My chest tightened. Max whimpered, sensing my fear. I gritted my teeth, determined not to show it. I had come this far, survived his threats, the notes, the stalking. I wasn't going to let him take me now. And then, the cliffhanger moment, the shocking twist that ends Chapter 7. From the corner of my eye, I saw someone stepping out of the car blocking the road. A shadowy figure.
Tall.
Menacing. And in a split second, I recognized the face. It wasn't Jason. It was someone else. Someone who had been part of this plan all along. Before I could react, the car door slammed open, the sound echoing in the empty street. My breath caught in my throat. I realized in that moment, the danger wasn't just Jason anymore. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than I imagined, and the real test of survival was just beginning.